Hi, I'm Shirley, a 31-year-old office worker. A year ago, I married Mason, a man I met on a blind date. After a year and a half of dating, he proposed. Settling down had always been my dream, so even though the proposal felt a bit hasty, I said yes. In hindsight, I realized I should have taken a more cautious approach. Not long after our wedding, Mason made a surprising decision to switch jobs. When I asked him about it, he explained that his previous position didn't allow him to fully showcase his skills. What stunned me even more was his announcement that he had already resigned and would be leaving by the end of the month. Thankfully, he found another job quickly, but it came with a lower salary than his last position. At first, I wasn't too worried since I had my own job, but then Mason started pushing me to quit. I might have considered it if his new salary had been enough to support us both, but with his recent job change, his pay was lower. He kept insisting it would go up soon, yet there was no indication of when that might happen. Quitting my job under such uncertain financial circumstances felt risky. We relied on my income to save and cover essential expenses like rent and car payments. Depending solely on Mason's current salary just wasn't practical. One evening, Mason handed me divorce papers, seemingly to intimidate me. "You know I'm ready for this whenever," he challenged. I urged him to take a breath and rethink his words, but he simply stood up and retreated to his room. That confrontation left me reflecting on the hasty decisions and unexpected changes that had occurred since I met Mason. I firmly told him I wouldn't quit my job until his salary improved. At first, he seemed to accept my stance, but the topic kept coming up. Each time he mentioned it, I stood my ground with the same unwavering response. Now, a year into our marriage, Mason's salary still hadn't changed, yet he kept pressuring me to quit my job. "When are you going to leave?" he would ask, and I often felt the urge to respond sarcastically. However, I knew our financial stability hinged on my income. If it was so crucial for me to resign, I believed Mason should focus on advancing his own career instead. As time passed, I began to understand why Mason was so adamant about my leaving work. This became evident during our visits to his parents' house. Whenever we were with his mother, Martha, Mason would feign concern, claiming he wanted to ease her burden. She would express her gratitude, and then he would glance at me pointedly, as if nudging me toward resignation. He suggested she needed help, but Martha was anything but helpless. She was active, healthy, and even held a part-time job that funded her hobbies and social life. It was clear she didn't require my assistance, yet Mason continued to push for my departure. "If only one of us could be home during the day, we could check on Mom every day," Mason said one day, seemingly out of nowhere. It was clear he envisioned me visiting Martha daily, which felt overwhelming and unnecessary. I asked him directly what he expected me to do since Martha was perfectly capable on her own. He listed off mundane tasks like helping with housework and running errands. It was obvious he had plans for how I could contribute, but none of them justified leaving my career. This endless cycle of requests and justifications was exhausting. I needed Mason to realize that while I was willing to support his family when needed, giving up my job without a solid reason was not something I could take lightly. "But Martha has her part-time job and spends most of her days out with friends, right?" I pointed out when he suggested I could take care of housework during the day. His response left me puzzled. Was he really implying I should become his mother's maid? Mason was deeply concerned about maintaining a certain image, especially in front of his parents. If he was so eager to take care of them, why couldn't he handle the household chores himself? Despite his persistent pressure, I stood firm in my decision not to quit my job. I also opted not to visit my in-laws on my days off, though I did make an effort to see them during major holidays like New Year's. As I reflected on our visits, a pattern emerged. Mason frequently delegated tasks to me, asking me to tidy up, assist his mom, or run errands. I pushed back against these requests. When he suggested I go to the store, I would reply, "Don't you know this area better than I do?" His standard excuse was that it wouldn't look right if he did it himself. A rationale I found both puzzling and manipulative. It seemed he was more focused on controlling the situation and projecting an image of family care than on genuinely caring for his parents or me. As time passed, my perception of Mason changed. It became clear that he was more focused on appearances than on genuine affection or respect for me. When I finally confronted him, asking why he didn't help out or even consider quitting his job to care for his mother, his reaction spoke volumes. He looked both disgusted and uncomfortable, replying, "That's not something I'm supposed to do." I'm giving you these instructions so my mom thinks you're a considerate, useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I'm being." His words were revealing. He essentially wanted to shift all the demanding tasks onto me while showcasing his virtue as if it were something extraordinary. But I am neither his servant nor his subordinate, and I certainly didn't deserve to be disrespected in front of my in-laws. It became increasingly clear that Mason's priorities were misaligned, valuing appearances over genuine partnership and support. If he continued with these unreasonable demands, I refused to stay silent. I will stand my ground. Despite our numerous discussions, Mason hasn't changed. He keeps pestering me with the same question. Are you going to quit your job? Furthermore, every time we visit my in-laws, he continues to boss me around as he always has. After reaching my breaking point, I realized it was time for a serious conversation. "We need to talk about our future," I said, hoping to guide our discussion towards something constructive. "What are you even trying to say?" Mason shot back, clearly annoyed. "I'm honestly fed up. I'm tired of you constantly asking when I'll quit my job, and I'm exhausted from the pressure to take care of Martha," I expressed, laying out my grievances. "Why are you so upset about that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to care for my parents," Mason retorted. "Don't you think it's unfair to place that responsibility solely on me? Shouldn't you, as their biological child, the one helping with the housework and caring for them?" I challenged, confronting his outdated views. "No way. It's the wife's duty to do it." "Are you the kind of person who doesn't care about family?" Mason accused, clearly upset by my resistance. "I'm disappointed to hear you say that," he added. Seizing the moment to highlight the double standard, I asked, "Then let me ask you this. How have you been caring for my parents? If I asked you to take care of them, would you do it?" Mason stared at me blankly, struggling to understand the connection. "What are you saying? Why should a husband be responsible for his wife's parents? So does that mean you won't ever take care of my parents?" I pressed, aiming to highlight his inconsistency. "The husband's parents and the wife's parents are totally different," Mason replied, missing the point entirely. "What difference does that make?" "I don't understand," I said, feeling increasingly frustrated. "I didn't realize you were so out of touch. It's like talking to my old boss." "What are you trying to say?" Mason asked, clearly confused. "I'm saying that a husband should take care of his own parents, and you should support your wife's family too," I replied, trying to emphasize the importance of mutual support and equality in our responsibilities. I felt the need to clarify, so I added, "So you only prioritize your own blood relatives. I'm really disappointed in you. I won't be visiting your parents anymore." "Why would you do that?" "Enough is enough. I'm the one who wants you to stop this nonsense," he shot back. "No way. How dare you talk to me like that? My mom is right," Mason exclaimed, his temper flaring. "Ha, your mom was talking about you. She said you're a badly behaved husband. That's why she gave me this," he said, pulling a piece of paper from his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You had divorce papers ready?" I asked, shocked, but Mason looked oddly proud of himself. "See? I scared you, didn't I? I'm ready for this anytime, so think about what you just said," Mason declared smugly before heading to his room. Unbelievable. Why is Mason so selfish? I thought, fuming. That triumphant look on his face made it clear that the divorce papers were just a threat to manipulate me. The fact that Martha was involved only fueled my suspicion. Mason was acting like a puppet for his mom, trying to control me while following her orders. It was ridiculous. I wouldn't let him have his way. How could he not see that our marriage was in serious trouble with this behavior? His lack of understanding only frustrated me further. Mason had already completed the divorce papers and handed them to me with witnesses present, including Martha and his friends. This meant I could sign and file them whenever I wanted. The next day after Mason left for work, I filled out the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office as a precaution. I also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate. Knowing Mason might threaten to file a marriage certificate on his own, I called my parents to explain the situation. When they learned I had prepared the divorce papers, they were initially shocked but quickly rallied behind my decision. Outraged by Mason's behavior, they offered to help me move my belongings right away. Taking a leave from work, I had my parents come over, and together we relocated all my things to their house while Mason was out. I decided to stay with my parents for a while. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely comfortable and at ease in their home. Reflecting on my marriage, it became clear that Mason never contributed his fair share to our household chores. I was the one cooking dinner after long workdays and managing all the cleaning and laundry on my days off. On top of that, he expected me to care for his parents, which simply wasn't feasible. That evening, Mason called, likely just back from work. "Hey, where are you right now?" he asked. "I'm at my parents' house," I replied. "Oh, why would you go back there without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying the night," he questioned, his tone a mix of surprise and selfishness. I almost laughed at how oblivious he was to the seriousness of the situation, thinking I was just staying overnight when I had actually taken most of my belongings with me. "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "What are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food," he demanded. "Make it yourself," I replied, ending the call. I couldn't engage in a conversation about divorce while he continued to be so dismissive. To find some peace, I decided to block his number and wait for him to come to my parents' house. A week later, Mason arrived at my parents' home, accompanied by his parents. They all wore serious expressions as we faced off in the living room, 3 against 3. "How could you do this? How could you leave without my permission?" Mason demanded, incredulity and accusation lacing his voice. "You treated me like a housekeeper, Mason. All I ever asked was for you to take responsibility for your family," I replied, stating my ground. "That's not true. What kind of wife would I be if I didn't take care of Mason?" Martha shot me a fierce glare. My father began to tremble with anger, but I quickly intervened. Mason insisted that I quit my job to care for Martha, claiming it was my duty as his wife. Yet when it comes to my own family, he expects me to manage everything alone. Ultimately, Mason seeks obedience, using me to take care of his parents while taking all the credit. That's why he prioritizes his parents over mine. "Have you ever heard Mason say these things?" I asked. Martha continued to glare, but Lamb looked confused, as if he hadn't known about any of this before. "Let me clear the air," Mason interjected, waving the divorce papers and claiming it was all Martha's idea. "Why would you say that?" Lamb asked, clearly taken aback. "Oh no, it's because Camila has an attitude problem," Martha stammered. "And did you really say that Camila's parents aren't a priority?" I pressed. "Well, it's only natural for your parents to come first," Martha shot back defensively. "Don't be absurd. I came here to support you after hearing about the unfair treatment Camila has faced, but it seems you're the one at fault. Don't hide behind her parents' authority to manipulate the situation," Liam said, causing Mason to visibly shrink in his seat. Liam then turned to me and my parents, offering an apology. "I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by my foolish son. I will have a serious talk with him." "Liam, you're not to blame at all, so please don't apologize," I replied. "Thank you for your understanding, but there's something else I need to address." I turned to Mason, who now looked nervous. "The divorce papers you gave me? I've already filed them. We're no longer married." Mason and Martha both turned pale. "Why did you file those without my permission?" Mason demanded, his shock evident. "You told me I could file them whenever I wanted. Besides, you filled out your part and had Martha sign as a witness," I calmly explained, leaving Mason momentarily speechless. Seeing the escalating tension, Lamb intervened, furious. "Mason, you used divorce as a threat," he exclaimed, and in a moment of rage, slapped Mason across the face. Martha looked visibly shaken by the scene. Lamb then turned to me and offered a sincere apology. "I sincerely apologize that you had to witness this. You have every right to divorce this fool. On behalf of Mason, I'm truly sorry for the damage done to your marriage," Liam said, tightening his grip on Mason's collar as he demanded apologies from both him and Martha before ushering them out of the house. Later, I expressed my gratitude to Liam for his intervention. He reassured me that all of Mason's assets and property would be transferred to me without any complications, considering my higher income and the effort I had invested in managing our household. It was a relief to know I had secured everything from our marriage. I later learned that Liam had divorced Martha, clearly appalled by her behavior. One day, I bumped into a colleague from Mason's former workplace who had some surprising news. Mason hadn't been performing well at his job and was frequently criticized by his boss. In a fit of defiance, he resigned and switched jobs, which only deepened my frustration with him. Instead of owning up to his shortcomings, he chose to blame others, which likely contributed to his lower pay at the new position. Now, I feel a sense of relief having left him behind. I've rented a cozy apartment and am enjoying my newfound independence. Work is going well, and I'd even received a raise recently. For now, I'm not interested in dating. I prefer to focus on my career. Mason was always more concerned with appearances than with genuine skills. He put on a show at home but never made any real progress in his career. It's unfortunate how some spouses resort to using divorce threats as a way to feel powerful. It's a major misstep. I hope they eventually recognize their mistakes and find happiness on their own. As for me, I'm grateful to have moved on from Mason and look forward to the possibility of meeting someone special when I'm ready.